we'll be moving on to pillar 5, upselling and increasing repair order value. This is going to be quite the heavy pillar here. It's very important on how we're creating value in our upsells, how we're creating value in our repair orders, and how that affects the people around us and how it affects the customer. So first off, we'll talk about is identifying your opportunities for legitimate upsells. So none of us, you shouldn't be selling anything that doesn't need to be sold. Now, it's very easy to get greedy, to get excited about seeing things that need to be sold. But I tell you now, be transparent. There's plenty of times where I've seen bushings or a leak, and they're leaking or they're seeping, but they're not quite at that point where they're probably like severe or like bad enough to where they potentially need to be replaced. But if I'm showing a customer a video or a picture, I'm going to be honest with them. I'm going to set them up to know that repair is coming. So let's say bushings. So you see the upper control arm bushings are going bad on a car. So you're taking a picture. I always categorize my repairs 1, 2, 3. 1 being, which I never use, 1 being sort of bad, going bad. Number 2 is like, okay, this is bad, it's only going to get worse. And number 3, it's bad, we need to replace it. So the first thing that we're going to tell the customer is, all right, Mr. Customer, I see your bushings here. They're about a category 2. Probably in the next 10 to 20,000 miles, I'm going to see, you're going to probably start to notice some of these things. You're going to notice that maybe the handling gets a little bit worse. You might have some excessive tire wear, and eventually you're going to notice some noise over bumps and turns. And right there, what I'm letting them know is, as those bushings get worse, these are some things that can happen. Same thing with leaks and other components of the vehicle that you're trying to upsell. You know, set that seed, plant that seed for them, you know, because if you're building trust for the long run, it's not just about this visit, it's about 2 or 3 visits down the road. And while that doesn't directly affect you, if you're doing it, people in your shop see you doing it, the whole entire shop's going to start thinking the same way. And those seeds are going to be set for everyone in the shop. Whether you get those upsells or not, maybe they come back in, you know, to get those repairs done. Maybe you get that repair back. Or in some circumstances, some customers are like, well, I'm already there, let's just do it now. But at the end of the day, all you can do is let the customer know what's wrong with their car. One thing I don't like to do is like threaten customers or tell the customers cars are gonna fly off the road. Like, I'm just there to let them know what the component's doing. So if I've got a control arm bushing that's completely separated, like they already know that it's bad. Like it's clunking, it's clanking, maybe their car drives right, like they know what's going on. So I just like to say that like things are like unsafe to drive. That's pretty much like the top of the line where I'm going to go. I'm not going to get into detail about all the potential like bad things that could happen to them. I just don't like to threaten customers that way. So let's say that my control arm bushings, my quote, we'll go over videos at a later point, but my quote is going to say something along the line, all right, let's notice your upper control arm bushings are completely separated. They're at category 3, meaning that they're at this point, they're unsafe to drive. You can see here that they're moving excessively or that bushing has completely separated. If you've done your test drive, you'll know that it's making noise. So you can tell them, notice that it's making noise, it's clunking, it's going to affect your tire wear, it's definitely affecting your handling, and you've already noticed that it's making noises or bumps and turns. This bushing's only going to get worse, and those issues with your car are only going to get worse. So I'm going to recommend at this time to replace, I always like to replace bushings in sets. In certain circumstances, you can replace one side or the other. Some people, it just depends on your preference and the dealership's preference. I always like to do them together. So for Audis, it's all 4 upper control arm bushings. All right, I'm going to recommend all 4 upper control arm bushings and an alignment. If you're doing suspension work, recommend alignment. No, you need to realize when you're quoting something, the post steps of it. If you're doing suspension work, you need to do alignment. If you're dropping the subframe, you need to do alignment. And if you have driver assistance and you take the front bumper off, chances are the repair manual is going to tell you to do a calibration. Now, could you get away with not doing them? Probably. But what does the repair manual say? Because at the end of the day, that's your backing point. Now, if you don't feel ethically correct to sell an alignment after you do suspension work, like that's completely up to you. The way I do it is if the repair manual tells me to do it, I'm going to recommend it, whether I believe it or not, because at the end of the day, if it came down to a legal document and the repair manual says to do it and you didn't do it, that could be bad. So just go with what the repair manual says. It's the easiest thing. You're never going to hurt yourself. If someone's getting upset that you're selling like something, the repair manual says it, like, hey, it's right here. Well, maybe they just learned something from you that they can make those upsells now too. All right, same thing with maintenance. If I'm doing maintenance, I really don't sell maintenance that much. Sometimes, like alignments would probably be it. Most of our customers at my dealership are pretty good about keeping up with their maintenance. If I see someone's coming in for a service and I notice they haven't done spark plugs or filters, like I'll check those filters, put eyes on them, see if they're dirty or not, or spark plugs, transmission flushes, whatever the maintenance is. Like that's the last thing I'm selling. And I won't even mention it in my videos just because it's not important. at the end of the day, their car's not going to do anything better or worse. I mean, in the long run, yes, replacing these maintenance items will help them, but their car's not going to drive like going to fall apart the next day from not doing maintenance. So send it last and don't get crazy with it. Like I don't do any like power steering flush, coolant flush. Like unless they're having a coolant issue, I'm not really doing that. Like AC services, if they're coming in complaining about AC, why are you gonna like unless you can't diagnose it, you're not really gonna fill it back up, add dye, and ship it. That just doesn't make sense for you because what if you don't get it back? You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So I stay away from maintenance at all costs. I mean, I think alignments and RTBs are probably the biggest maintenance items I sell because tires are the most used part on a vehicle. You want to preserve those tires. Forming an alignment is an investment for the customer. It's important for you to word it like that. At this point, you'll have access to all my documents, my Word documents that I use, and you'll see how I sell my alignments and how I sell my RTBs. You're going to see how I sell everything. And I feel like it works pretty well. I've had a lot of people copy my documents and use those things, and they obviously change them up to fit what works best for them. And at this point, I will want to review some of those quotes and things that you're using to make sure that you're giving the customer all the information and you're not being too like reachy and you're not being like too aggressive. We don't want to scare anyone. We just want to make sure people are well informed. We're showing them what's going on with their car.